Good afternoon to everyone. I'm Nidhi Menon, and the topic of my icebreaker for today is the elephant in the room. An elephant is a big animal that is grey in color. An elephant is a large animal with big feet. An elephant is a huge animal with a long trunk. Now, if you thought I was making it an easy job for my evaluator, then you're likely mistaken because those are three lines that 5-year-old me wrote when I was asked to write an essay on an elephant. Now, I don't know if I did a good job for a 5-year-old at that essay, but what I do know is that that essay definitely made me a better writer. To be honest, I wouldn't have even remembered this incident from decades ago if it wasn't for my mother, who kept bringing this up at every instance she could, because she liked taunting me and reminding me of how I used three synonyms to describe the size of an elephant in three consecutive sentences. I remember being really annoyed as a child from because of her making fun of me. But what I didn't realize back then is that she was trying to use the technique of reverse psychology to get me to work on my written English. Anyway, I was mortified, and from that day onwards, I decided to read as many books and newspapers as I could in order to understand how authors structure their sentences and convey their thoughts in a grammatically correct manner to their audience. Slowly, I started writing short essays and stories and get them reviewed from my mother or anybody else at home. I'll admit, I used to feel bad when they pointed out my mistakes, but there were times when my mom really had a few words of encouragement for me. She used to say, "You'll never learn anything in life if you're always perfect, because the best thing that you can make in life is a mistake." So, with those words of advice in mind, I took it all in stride and marched forward on my journey to being a better writer. A few years later, I was in the fourth grade, and I distinctively remember this day when I was really bored during a free period in school. So I decided to write a poem for absolutely no reason. It's a short one, so I thought I'll share that with all of you today. It goes like this. Yesterday night, I saw a dream in which I went with the team to the big planet Jupiter, the biggest planet Jupiter. On the way, as we all hopped, something came and we were stopped. We looked up and saw no bars, but then we realized that it was Mars. We traveled till we reached Jupiter, where we saw thorny plants for 1 meter. At first sight, they looked really old, but when we touched them, they turned into gold. I know most of you are thinking that this is the strangest and stupidest poem that you have ever heard. But trust me when I say, as a fourth grader, I was really happy and proud of what I'd written back then, and I just couldn't wait to get home and see the reaction that my mother would give. And boy oh boy, I was in for a surprise because she not only appreciated what I'd written, but also encouraged me to keep writing more. And that right there was just the beginning. As years flew by, I kept improving my writing skills based on what I learned from my teachers and from other resources. Slowly, I started participating in essay writing competitions to get an understanding of where I stood amongst my peers. But the icing on the cake was when a couple of years ago I appeared for my GRE exams and I poured my heart out into the essays in the GRE analytical writing section. You know what? Those essays got me a score of 5.5 on a 6-point scale, placing me at the 97th percentile worldwide. I have to admit, I really rode high that day because that score gave me the validation that I had been seeking all along. I knew that day that my mom no longer could tease me about that essay from decades ago because very clearly I had addressed the elephant in the room. I know that I've put in a lot of planning, patience, and hard work into getting where I'm today, but I also do know that I'm far from perfect. So, in order to continue honing my writing skills, I write poems and blogs even today. In fact, my most recent adventure was 30 days of poetry in the month of April, which happens to be the National Poetry Writing Month, where people write a poem a day based on the different prompts given to them. Anyway, if you're wondering why I'm telling you this story today, it's not to tell you that you should go check out my poems and give me feedback, which by the way is always welcome, but instead to share a realization that has recently dawned upon me. What I did tell you was that I did a fairly good job in the GRE written section, but what I didn't is that I struggled to get decent scores in my TOEFL speaking section. After that, when I came here to grad school, I was almost always the last person to raise my hand to answer a question or to volunteer to speak up in a presentation. And now, here at Autodesk, I've started noticing how I choose to stay silent until I'm persuaded to voice my opinions in meetings. And just like that, there's a new elephant in the room that needs to be addressed. Looking back, I realized that my hesitancy to speak up is not due to my poor language skills, but instead it is due to a lack of practice. And to tackle that, I am here as a member of this Toastmasters club, trying to practice my speeches and trying to learn something new from each one of you every week. Because you know what they say about elephants: if there's one in the room, you hop on board and ride it around. Thank you.